If Naruto at all kekkei, let's go. The story starts normally on the night of the Nine Tails attack, though will very quickly turn very, very badly. Events follow as normal. Minato fights the Masked Man, then the Nine Tails, and finally has to, along with his wife, seal the Nine-Tailed Beast into his own firstborn son. And as Kushina and Minato are taking their last breaths, hoping for Naruto to survive and succeed in his life, they see a man approaching slowly, walking forward from the shadows of the forest. This man is none other than Orochimaru. With the kunai in his hand, he's prepared for battle, though the battle is already over. The last thing he sees is the fourth and his wife on the brink of death, and their son, who is surviving. No one was there, so Orochimaru took the chance and took the child with him. However, before Orochimaru was able to completely leave, he heard a name. Kushina yelled it at the top of her lungs the best she could, though even that was not very loud. Using the last of her energy, Kushina yelled, "Naruto!" But Orochimaru didn't have to turn back to look. He knew that that was the child's name that was given to him. He's a scientist, not a villain, so he's gonna respect the name and keep the name. Orochimaru does have some respect for Minato. They were pretty much rivals for some time after all. However, Orochimaru does despise Minato as well, as he wanted to become Hokage, though of course he wasn't chose Minato. Orochimaru hated, but also respected Minato very much. He was very young, yet one of the most powerful shinobi in the entire war, and in the entire world, as Minato did in fact carry the entire Third Ninja War, and annihilated any shinobi that came near him. And with that thought, Orochimaru left the scene. It's right after Anbu along with Hiruzen came only to see Naruto's dead parents, both laying next to each other hand in hand, however with a smile on their face nonetheless. They didn't like Orochimaru, but they knew that he'd at least be somewhat safe. At least he would survive. Orochimaru was excited for the following weeks, months, and even years. He finally had an Uzumaki to experiment with, and not just that, he was son of the fourth Hokage and the Red Death of Konoha. Orochimaru saw potential in that boy that no one else could have even grasped. Perhaps somewhat unrealistic, though still. Orochimaru was going to try his best to keep this boy alive, as he didn't want to try any fatal experiments. He was going to go step by step. First, just looking at his DNA, trying to research, find out more about him and his heritage, and then more and more actual experiments, and more dangerous ones. Orochimaru found a weird kind of chakra inside Naruto. It wasn't his own, it wasn't nature energy, it was something different. It wasn't even the Nine Tails. It was inexplainable, but Orochimaru wanted to dig deeper. He felt that there was much more untouched potential, and even this weird kind of chakra would increase as well. There would just have to be an awakening. However, before any of that, Naruto would have to get some Senju DNA, more specifically, Hashirama Senju. This would up his regenerative abilities, making experiments much easier to do, as there wouldn't be much of a risk, at least not that much, and Naruto would take less time regenerating so they could do more experiments in a shorter amount of time. It was brilliant, but first, they had to get Naruto to actually merge with the Senju DNA. They being Kabuto and Orochimaru working together. Their initial thought was that Naruto, because he's Uzumaki, which is a cousin clan of the Senju, should absorb the cells much easier than a normal person would, which they tried. They were a little skeptical, and almost broke off the experiment because they thought it would be a little too dangerous just doing it without testing out first, but it worked in the end. After only half a week, Naruto fully absorbed the Senju cells and merged it with his own, increasing his regenerative abilities as well as his chakra output and capabilities. Now, over time, Orochimaru would give him more and more Hashirama cells, as it would just give more and more regenerative abilities, which would make experiments much easier. Of course, Orochimaru continued to each week take some of Naruto's DNA to see what was going on, and the results became better and better every single time. The results of every experiment were so great that Orochimaru took up all of his time on just this one boy, and Kabuto started to do the same thing. All other plans of domination were completely set aside for Naruto, and with this they started to lure out Naruto's chakra elements. And since they couldn't get Naruto to put out any chakra on a piece of paper to test out what abilities he had, well, they'd had to do it by force. And Orochimaru found a way to do it by force, which he had tried on many people before, though it resulted in quite a few fatalities. Though he was going to start lightly and then put up the force more and more, as it was Naruto after all. So he started by giving electric shocks. These electric shocks would not only get Naruto's body to react and become more active, but also to lure out his lightning abilities, as feeling the electricity flow through Naruto's body should awaken his cells and his chakra to come forth, at least to be able to see the capabilities. Not yet have him do any jutsu, but just make sure that it's possible in the future. In the tank that Naruto was residing in, they also did many things to his environment. Heated it up to see if he has fire nature, made him suffocate for just a little bit as if he was actually underwater, so basically just cutting off his oxygen as he was already in a liquid, and even manipulated his pain sensors so that it felt as if he was on the earth, having rocks being thrown at him, being one with actual rock. Now that doesn't sound very pleasant, but it's one of the only experiences that Naruto has in his entire life, so he doesn't really know what's good and bad, so it's just kind of something. Naruto had a response to each one of these stimuli, at least to some extent, to some more than others, especially wind, which was created by having basically waves in the liquid tank, making Naruto feel as if he was flying in the air. That one had the biggest effect, completely changing Naruto's heartbeat, mood, which they were kind of able to see, and made his brain more active, showing signs of capability for wind chakra. But he had some respondents to every single stimuli, which is unheard of. Orochimaru was completely shocked and sometimes even double-checked to make sure that the equipment isn't broken. It felt like every experiment on Naruto was successful, which is why Kabuto gave Orochimaru an idea which they would focus on for the next 2 years. A dangerous idea for anyone else, but for this vessel, it might be possible. And since they already had Senju DNA, more importantly from Hashirama himself, Kabuto proposed they give Naruto other clans' DNA as well. They didn't want to start with Uchiha, as that was basically the opposite of Senju, and that might make Naruto react in a negative way, so they waited for that first. But continued with others, such as the Hyuga clan, which was a pretty neutral clan between the Uchiha and Senju feud, which is why that would probably be the best. And it worked. Naruto absorbed the Hyuga chakra perfectly. Then they tried the Nara clan, which would hopefully increase Naruto's intelligence over time. And who would have guessed, it worked. And they tried some more altogether with Inuzuka, Aburame, Akamichi, and some more lesser known clans, including the Yamanaka clan. Now at first it wasn't a lot of DNA that Naruto was given, but over time they would give a little more of each one. But then, the last boss almost, the elephant in the room, the Uchiha DNA. It was risky, especially seeing that Naruto was basically the cousin of the rivals, the direct rivals, for generations, and even had some of the rivals' DNA. But they would have to do it if they truly wanted to make Naruto as powerful as they could. By the way, if you're wondering why Orochimaru is doing all of this, it's simply because he wants to manipulate Naruto for him to become the strongest. As if he can have one of the strongest combinations of clans, chakra natures, abilities, and literally anything he wants put into one boy and control that boy perfectly, as if he is his own father, well, then it'd be easy to take over the planet, the world, to take over any village that he desired. So it was done. Naruto got the Uchiha DNA, and it worked. The Uchiha DNA merged surprisingly well. Of course, not as good as some of the others, but given a week or so, it worked. They would have to take a little more time to completely merge with Naruto's cells and actually completely integrate in Naruto's chakra system, but it worked. No damages on Naruto, and now he had most major clans in his body, and they all are working. Orochimaru and Kabuto continued to give more and more of the stronger clans, such as the Uchiha, Senju, and of course, Hyuga too. And something they added later was DNA of the Kaguya clan, specifically Kimimaro. If you don't know what the Kaguya clan is, they're basically just descendants of Kaguya, very distant of course, but some of them have the bone release, such as Kimimaro, and Orochimaru just wanted to see if Naruto could have it, and of course he does. They merge actually the easiest so far, besides the Senju of course, and now Orochimaru was making plans on actually releasing Naruto. Naruto was 6 years old at this point, but Orochimaru and Kabuto wanted to train Naruto as soon as possible, and actually unlock his powers, make him the strongest he could be. So, they made plans, and they were going to control Naruto's entire life. Any information that he got, any training that he did, every single movement of his bones, muscle, and skin, every ability that he unlocked would be documented and predicted for the future. Everything should be exactly as planned. Those two were complete control freaks, yet very, very smart, and made a complete 2-year list, a complete timeline, even day-to-day structuring Naruto's life for the next 2 years. And once they were done with this entire plan, Naruto was 6¼ years old, but they decided to start as soon as possible. So, the day began, where they released Naruto out of his tube for the first time. Naruto stood out of the tube like a god standing from heaven. With pride in Naruto's eyes, he asked Orochimaru who he was. That completely shocked him. They didn't teach Naruto anything, not even how to speak or understand. So, how is he speaking like this? Backtracking. Naruto was able to hear many things that Orochimaru and Kabuto said, and over the years, he started to understand what they said. But more importantly, Naruto was starting to hear more and more of a mysterious voice. This was Kurama. At first, they didn't understand each other at all, and Kurama talking was kind of useless. Though Kurama was very, very bored, and even though he dislike Naruto completely, there wasn't much that they would do against each other for now, so Kurama kept talking, and Naruto found this very, very interesting. And over weeks and months, Kurama keeping on to talk, as well as the outside world, being somewhat able to be heard from Naruto, Naruto started to understand, and even slowly start to speak with Kurama. Now, he was very easily impressionable, which is why Kurama was able to talk to him without much backlash. But even if Naruto was a blank slate and Kurama would be able to control him, Kurama is not gonna control a child. Now, that doesn't mean he's not gonna wait for future events to follow and for him to control him then. But I'm just saying he's not gonna control Naruto as a child. It's completely immoral. Of course, controlling an adult is completely okay. I mean, we all know that that's normal. Just saying a child, not great. So Kurama would wait, but continue to talk to Naruto, preparing for the future. Now, back to Naruto standing in front of Orochimaru and Kabuto, asking who they are. Naruto knows their name, Kabuto, and Orochimaru, as he's heard them many times. He just doesn't know who they are. But now he does. The two standing in front of him are those two, Kabuto and Orochimaru, and they explain quite a few things, though of course, not all being the truth. If they told the actual truth, well, Naruto would probably not be completely on their side. They said that Orochimaru rescued Naruto from almost being killed by a beast, and he was completely an orphan. All his family died, and no one even knew he existed, and he was left to die. Gladly, Orochimaru came to save him. Of course, part of it was true, but realistically, not a lot of it. But as there was nothing else proving Orochimaru wrong, Naruto would have to believe this for now. And he started the plan. This plan, dubbed Sequence Naruto, made by Orochimaru with much help of Kabuto, taking over 2 months to prepare, but planning every day for 2 years of Naruto's life. The first year was miserable, but great at the same time. It was the first year of Naruto's existence, at least in his mind. He had never had anything else in his life before, so this was what the world was for him. And what he thought was the whole world. He didn't know of the many beautiful things to explore and see, so that was all the world for him. The entire world for him was just training, eating, sleeping, experiments, and more training. And he did that for 400 days long, until things seemed to change drastically. Naruto has developed greatly. Many new abilities have been unlocked. Even Naruto's eyes seem to change over the years, as all the Hyuga, Uchiha, DNA merged and changed Naruto's eyes, as every time he poured chakra into his body, some went to his head, especially his eyes, which made them stronger over time, but actually turned one eye whitish, resembling a little bit of that of the beginning stages of a Hyuga's Byakugan, and the other already a completed One Tomoe Sharingan. Now, the way that he got the Sharingan was with the continuous electric shocks that put quite a massive strain on Naruto's body, as Orochimaru knew that at some point it would unlock the Sharingan. But he had to go much further than he expected at first, so it did take quite a toll on Naruto's body, and he had to take a week to recover completely. He had burn marks all over, and it was not pleasant, and this was the breaking point. At the 1-year anniversary, Naruto seemed to not like Orochimaru as much anymore, and over the coming weeks, he had more and more evidence not to like him at all. And Orochimaru started to get more distant to Naruto as well. At first, they were actually like a father-son duo, but then Orochimaru turns cold, silent. Naruto and Orochimaru's relationship got more and more distant, as they didn't really like each other anymore. Kabuto tried his best to keep the peace, though even that failed over the weeks. Naruto was treated worse and worse by Orochimaru, and Naruto complied less and less. Kabuto hoped that both of them would hopefully stop with this very soon, as else the last couple of months could be all for nothing if this goes on. But he was wrong. If anything, it got worse. Orochimaru became more and more tough, and on any physical experiment, he put more power, more electricity, more fire. In sparring matches, he went with more power. And of course, whilst he didn't want to hurt or kill Naruto at all, not even close, it was his most prized possession. Their personal relationship was not looking good, and he had to let out his anger in some way. He wasn't in control, and in this time of desperation, Naruto looked inward, to Kurama. Kurama was the one person that had never really given Naruto any orders in his life, and actually seemed very nice and peaceful. Naruto asked if they could spar in his mindscape, as Kurama has explained quite a few things about the mindscape to Naruto including that they can change it as they like. Naruto started to spend more and more time meditating, well, really in this mindscape with Kurama, talking, sparring, or really just chilling. It was much more comfortable in his mindscape, as Kurama had taught him how to change his mindscape as he liked. At first, it was a sewer-like place, cold, wet, metal-filled, but it turned better and better. The water disappeared. The cage of Kurama completely disappeared, as they had an agreement, which was that Kurama wouldn't do anything weird, and they would just be friends. It was Naruto's idea. After learning his name, he wanted to be friends. He didn't have a friend, so why not have Kurama be his first friend? Of course, Kurama couldn't not agree, so they became friends. And learning many things from Kurama, Naruto got much stronger and seeked shelter. Kurama and Naruto got closer and closer as Naruto and Orochimaru drifted farther and farther apart, which Naruto was not enjoying. Of course, he loved Kurama, but he wanted other people in his life. He relied on Orochimaru for quite a while, so it was weird without him. Well, emotionally speaking, without him. But then everything changed. Now, it had been a little more time, a few more months, but then a certain boy infiltrated Orochimaru's base. This boy was an Uchiha, Itachi Uchiha, son to Fugaku and Mikoto, an absolute prodigy, a legend. Well, if he stayed in Konoha, that is. But he killed his clan. He killed every single Uchiha left, including his family, friends, and everybody he knew, except for one person, the person dearest to him, his brother. And now he was breaking in Orochimaru's base. He saw many awfully disturbing things, such as test tubes with people in it, small children, animals in test tubes, and many unfinished projects which look completely absurd. One being a water goo. It was water, but it was more condensed than the tank around it. Didn't make sense, so Itachi moved on. Until he came to Naruto. Specifically, Naruto, who was laying on his bed, resting from his training that he had just 10 minutes ago. Itachi is prepared for a fight, but realizes that Naruto has no intention of fighting. Naruto asks who he is, and he responds with a mysterious title. Not even that. He just responds with nothingness. "I'm a former shinobi," he says, which doesn't make any sense to Naruto. How could you be something but not something? Naruto introduces himself by name, but of course no last name, as he doesn't know his last name, as he doesn't even know that last names exist. As Kurama vowed himself to not tell anything about Naruto's parents, at least not for now. He isn't fit enough, he isn't old and mature enough. So Naruto knows nothing about his parents, except for the lies that Orochimaru sowed. Naruto indulges Itachi in a quite long conversation, until Kabuto goes to check on Naruto as he does usually every day, to deliver some snacks between trainings. Of course, all high protein, not very tasty, but necessary for training. But then drops his plate as he sees Itachi, who quickly glared his Sharingan, being able to track Kabuto in a genjutsu just fast enough before he was able to alarm Orochimaru. Kabuto stands there in the hallway, and then is brought in as if he was a statue not being able to move by Itachi, as if a piece of cardboard, but shaped as a human. Naruto's astounded, but is not saying anything negative. He's just curious. "What did you do to Kabuto?" "I put him to sleep," Itachi said. Naruto goes to check on Kabuto, though realizes quickly that luckily he's not dead. Just trapped in a genjutsu, where time is going by really slow, and he can't do anything on the outside of the world. In the real world, Itachi hiding in Naruto's room, hiding on the roof, then hears somebody come in. Well, about to come in. Orochimaru himself came, as Kabuto was 5 minutes late, which is very unlike him. He'd never been late, even just 1 minute in the past 2 years. Orochimaru was in high guard, as there was nothing that would ever make Kabuto late except an intruder. And once he was prepared, he wasn't prepared for one of the strongest Sharingan users ever. Itachi immediately, when seeing Orochimaru enter through the door, sent a wave of Amaterasu flames, slightly burning Orochimaru's foot, but nothing more. As in simply 1 second, Orochimaru was able to completely shed his skin like a snake. He was a snake, to be honest. He is a snake Sannin after all. It's still gross in my opinion. But anyways, their battle ensued, with Itachi being a master of the kunai, along with being able to use his eyes so that Orochimaru cannot look at his opponent, else he will be under a permanent genjutsu that will only be broken by Itachi, or Naruto, I guess. At this point, Orochimaru yells for Naruto to attack Itachi and help him defeat the opponent, though Naruto is not sure. He's conflicted. Of course he wants to help his father, his family, but this man was so nice, and Orochimaru hasn't been that nicest. So, whilst he's thinking for quite a long time, Orochimaru keeps on fighting, but is slowly losing his edge, as he's not very good at using his tricks in such a confined space. So he tries to break open the entire compound into the free, though Itachi grabs him by the foot and throws him on the ground quick enough. Though at this point, it's already too late for Orochimaru, with the shock of being hit to the ground. On his back, Orochimaru by instinct opens his eyes, as he's forced to after losing all control of his body for just 1 second, though it's enough for Itachi. Itachi puts the genjutsu on Orochimaru with his Tsukuyomi used, an ability from his Mangekyo Sharingan. Now that Kabuto and Orochimaru are both in paralysis from the genjutsu, and there's nothing they can do, it's up to Naruto. He's free now. If he wants to go, he can go. Itachi tries to explain this, though Naruto really isn't grasping it. He never had this kind of freedom, so he doesn't know what to do. And as Itachi is leaving Orochimaru's base, picking a few things up here and there, he leaves, as Naruto follows him into the open. For the very first time, Naruto sees the sky. He's always been kept underground, and has never seen the sun. Naruto is completely amazed, and looks in awe at the sky, turning in a 360, being amazed by every little thing, even by the trees, grass, and insects everywhere. Naruto is amazed. Itachi is a little bit weirded out, but also feels sorry for this boy. He's probably been tortured by Orochimaru. What do I do with him? Itachi tries to leave, but Naruto follows him again, as he needs someone to take care of him. And as Itachi realizes that, he just goes on, as he wants to see how far Naruto is willing to follow him. Perhaps he'll turn back at a certain point away from his home. But he was wrong. Naruto followed Itachi for the rest of the day, until Itachi set up camp somewhere in the forest. As he didn't travel far, he only traveled as fast as Naruto could, and that wasn't that fast, or at least he didn't know how fast Naruto could walk. So he just went at a normal walking distance and speed. Didn't make much progress towards his goals, but it was alright. 1 or 2 days he could take off, basically. There wasn't any schedule for him anyways. He was a rogue shinobi now, and life was actually pretty chill. Of course, he hated what he had to do, and what the village forced him to do, as he was forced to massacre his own clan, due to Danzo and political relations with the Uchiha clan and Konoha, though he would have to get over it. It's been half a month now. Whilst Itachi slept in his tent that he set up, Naruto slept on a piece of wood next to the tent, and woke up when Itachi put out the fire that lit overnight to keep animals away. And then as Naruto woke up, he followed Itachi again, as he had already broke camp and was starting to leave quietly. But of course he couldn't shake off Naruto, so he slowed down his walking and walked beside Naruto, neither of them speaking a word. Though Naruto smiled, Itachi found this pretty weird. This kid had just lost his home, if you could even call it that. Probably didn't want to be there, but it was the only place he knew. But she was smiling the day after, with the guy who basically paralyzed his caretaker. It wasn't making sense to Itachi, as even he was just a 13-year-old kid. Almost 14 now, but still pretty young. So they started walking side by side, not saying a word. And they went on for the next day, and the next, and the next. And Itachi actually started to pick up the pace a little bit, wanting to see how Naruto's endurance and speed is. And Naruto, surprisingly, was able to keep up perfectly. They traveled together more and more. Itachi even taking some more difficult paths, going uphill, going up mountains, and even starting to run. Not completely run as fast as a shinobi would, but starting to pick up the pace. Of course, it was pretty exhausting, though Naruto was able to keep up. And over the next few days, Naruto's endurance would grow as well, as he didn't really train that much endurance, but with Itachi like this, he would have to. They traveled together, and whilst they didn't talk that much to each other, they enjoyed each other's atmosphere and calmness. They could communicate without talking. They were based off emotions. Itachi liked a chill guy, and Naruto was just that. However, Naruto did talk quite a bit to Kurama, especially whilst he was sleeping. It was just someone to talk to, and he reported everything that happened to Kurama. Even though Kurama could see everything in Naruto's life with his own eyes, Naruto liked to report everything he saw, and at least talk to someone about it, as no one really cared about his feelings that much. Kabuto used to, and Orochimaru used to too, but that kind of stopped. So, Naruto had all these emotions dwelled up, but Itachi was so calm that Naruto could let them out slowly, without having to burst, and it was a very calming and relaxing experience. Itachi and Naruto started to grow closer and closer, and even became friends. Rather, Naruto definitely considered Itachi a friend, and Itachi was warming up to Naruto as well. They ate together, smiled together, walked together, and enjoyed their time. Of course, Itachi was still pretty stressed. He was still basically leaving the area near the Leaf Village, as he was gonna be hunted by everyone in the village. He needed a permanent place to stay, or at least an actual place, not a tent every night, and he had a plan. Well, until he met Naruto, that is. He just came to pick up ailments from Orochimaru. Of course, he couldn't tell Orochimaru that, but he got them anyways. He only used the genjutsu after all, so he didn't kill anyone. If you're wondering what he picked up from Orochimaru's bunker, well, it was medicine. Itachi knew that he was gonna get sick pretty soon, and there were already some signs of it, which is why he wanted to prepare as much as possible, as he still had to survive until his younger brother met him, and they could end their long rivalry and hate for each other. Or rather, Sasuke's hate for his older brother Itachi. And Itachi could die in peace, knowing that he saved his brother from even more misery. That would still be a while, so for now, he would just have to keep himself safe and healthy. But what would he do with Naruto? They'd now been traveling for about 2 weeks, but don't know much about each other. Naruto has figured out that Itachi did something very bad, likely to his own clan, and then had to leave his village. But all Itachi knows of Naruto is that he was experimented on by Orochimaru and Kabuto, and for some reason has a pretty Uchiha-like appearance. Yes guys, you heard right. Naruto has black hair, as his naturally blonde spiky hair turned much darker. With the Senju genes he got, it turned a little darker, more of a brownish color, but then with the Uchiha genes, it turned even darker into more of a blackish color. So Naruto does not have yellow hair, he has more blackish hair. Naruto and Itachi continued to travel. They traveled through beautiful mountain ranges, through cold, snowy deserts, through thick, green, airy forests, and through many towns and villages, though Itachi mostly covered up whenever there were people around, and even then, he didn't want to go to many towns or villages in the first place. The two grew incredibly close and liked each other. Itachi had a friend, and when he ever wanted to talk, he could. And Naruto sometimes just talked to each other, not even expecting an answer, but he just wanted a human to talk to. He loved Kurama, of course, but it was nice to talk to Itachi too. However, at this point, Itachi was already hatching a plan. This one not about himself, but rather about Naruto. As Naruto would quickly be approaching the age of 8, Itachi had a plan, had an idea that Naruto should go ahead and meet his brother. Not specifically his brother, but should go to the village hidden in the leaves. The village that had forced Itachi to leave, but also the village that Itachi loved to the dearest of his heart. The village that he healed and saved, though was seen as a villain, a murderer. Itachi wanted Naruto to go to the Hidden Leaf Academy to become a shinobi, meet his brother, and someday they would likely reunite. However, it might be on the battlefield. Itachi doesn't say anything about his future plans to Naruto, plans that he has ideas that he might be able to join the Akatsuki and it would actually benefit him greatly, or anything like that. Without saying a word, they turned back as they were heading in one direction, towards the land of mist, though now we're heading to completely the opposite way, towards the land of fire. Specifically, the village hidden in the leaves. Naruto was kind of curious, though didn't suspect anything specific, and then, a week later, they arrived at the gates of the Hidden Leaf village. Naruto knew that Itachi couldn't show himself in the village, and asked if he should buy some supplies, but Itachi had a different plan. "I'm sorry, little one," Itachi said as 1 second later, he used his Sharingan, which he flared up, and used Tsukuyomi on Naruto. Itachi then knocked Naruto out after he was already paralyzed. Naruto, not being able to do anything even with Kurama, now wakes up in an alleyway, alone between two two-story buildings. When he looks around and goes on the street next to it, he sees the Hokage building. Wait, but this means I'm in Konoha. Wait, how did I get here? Flashback. Itachi disguised himself using the transformation jutsu, as well as clothing that would conceal his identity, sealed his chakra away into himself for a little bit, and took as many precautions as he could, and then was as fast as possible to deliver Naruto into a random street and leave him there. However, before completely leaving the village, he made sure to show that he's still there. When I say he paid a visit to a certain friend, Naruto looked around the village, looked for people. It was quite a busy day. There were many people shopping for goods, and everyone seemed happy. Perhaps a kind of festival, though Naruto was truly irritated and wanted to get back at Itachi. He thought that this was a kind of prank that Itachi was pulling, and really he was just buying groceries or something. He's gonna get Naruto back, of course. Of course, right? For now, Naruto walked through the village. He saw many people. Many much older than him, even older than Itachi. And some, weirdly, even older than Orochimaru. Naruto has seen quite a few things on his travels with Itachi and has gotten more familiar with the world, though of course, he is still an outsider to many things. He doesn't know all the ways that people can look different, wear different things, and is just not accustomed to normal everyday speech, events, items used, and stuff like that. Orochimaru taught him practical things, and Itachi never really went to villages that much, and he didn't want to have Naruto go alone, so they just kind of never really went to that many people, which is why Naruto has a big lack of experience when it comes to social skills. However, for the first time in quite a long time, he saw people his own age. There were mostly girls. Naruto wasn't sure why they were traveling in a pack, though there was probably some reason, or perhaps they wanted to go to a certain event altogether. whatever the reason may be, they looked kind and nice. Naruto was amazed at all the different hair colors and things that people dress up. Some wore one piece of clothing that was quite long. Some wore many different pieces of clothing, each one not that large. Some had pink hair, some blonde, others black, some brown. It was incredible, the diversity here. But really, Naruto hasn't seen anything yet. Are you lost, my dear? An old lady comes up to Naruto and asks him, no? Why do you need to know that? Naruto doesn't know how to respond and is actually kind of annoyed. He feels that she's underestimating his might, his ability. He hasn't really talked to any elderly people, so they're kind of a mystery to him and all. Well, alright then. Have a nice day. The woman smiled nicely and kept on walking. She had two really young kids, one girl and one boy on either side of her, each interlocking with one of her hands. Naruto was completely amazed. She was handling two kids at the same time, in such a manner. It was amazing. And then there were three people walking together, but these other than the other ones. They all had dogs. Wait a minute. I once learned about this. These are the what's its name? People of the Inozuka clan, that's it. They have dogs, that's interesting. I wonder what you can do with dogs. And, I mean, in battle. They're fast, but really? Aren't they gonna get hit? They don't exactly wear armor, so how are they gonna protect themselves from any jutsu? That's pretty stupid if you ask me. Naruto walked along. He continued on his way as he finally saw what looked to be the Ninja Academy. However, when going inside, there was no one there. He checked all the rooms, which took quite a while as there was more than he expected, but there was no one in the entire building. And he actually stumbled upon a door, but it was an upside down door. It wasn't on the wall, it was on the floor. And opening it, he saw that it led to underground paths which go quite far. And so he explored, thinking that perhaps the people are down here. So he walked through all the canon ways, all the paths. And he was taught to memorize everywhere he goes. And that's why he's able to know basically everywhere where he is, as he has an exceptional sensory ability that allows him to remember where he is, where he had to travel to, and just from little things like the sun, stars, speed of clouds, notable natural landmarks like mountains, or even old trees and big rocks and stones, he's able to determine pretty accurately where he is, and sometimes even when. He's able to determine the time of day to closest half hour. So he basically can always round to half an hour, and he knows exactly what time of the day it is just by looking at the sky. And has many instincts and abilities that help him survive out in the wild, being able to hunt, pick berries, mushrooms, and much more. Of course, there he greatly needed his sensory abilities and sureness, and be conscious of where and when he is. Anyway, so going through all these paths, he remembers every turn he takes and is able to count in his head without having to count at the beginning. He randomly thought, I wonder how I've been going for this long, and there's still much more path to explore. So immediately in his head, a number popped up, and he knew exactly how many steps he'd traveled and how much of a distance that is in meters. In feet, it's a little over 3 times, by the way. But Naruto finally decides to go back to the academy building where he came from and lock the door. Now, it took him about 5 hours to go through all the paths, go to each one of the dead ends, and come back, as there were dead ends laid out to trap enemies if they ever went into the leaf and went through these tunnels, as they were made for safety. And Konoha Shinobi know exactly where each path leads to, or at least most of them. Of course, not every single one, but the trained shinobi do. But there's hidden signs and marks to know exactly where you are that intruders can't read. So these paths are basically just to keep intruders away in case that you need to flee. And Naruto now knows the entire system without having to read any of the markings on the floor and walls and lighting. He knows each path, where it leads to, how it splits, where it splits, when it splits, and if it's a dead end or not, and everything, even what kind of buildings were atop. If it was a restaurant, it was a little warmer, and even a little wetter. So just the air moisture was higher, as more water was used in that area. And tiny details like that, Naruto was easily able to pick up without even focusing on it. So Naruto is now walking through the village as it had already gotten very, very dark and no one was out anymore. So Naruto decided to sleep in the same alley that he came from so that Itachi could pick him up on the next morning and they could be on their way back. Though Itachi never arrived. Itachi never arrived to pick up Naruto, and so he was stranded in the village of Konoha, left alone in an alleyway to fight for his own. And he slept there the next 3 nights, and stayed put the following 3 days. He was scared beyond belief. He'd never been completely alone in his life, but now he is completely alone. He has no one, not a single person, except for Kurama. Naruto is making so many weird concoctions up in his head. He was making weird scenarios, completely overthinking the situation, and what was very, very bad. There were no way things that Naruto was thinking were true. He was thinking, what if Itachi was dead? What if he had to do a mission that he couldn't take Naruto on? What if he was gonna come back, but then was picked off by someone else and is now fighting for his life? So many ideas and so many horrible things that could have happened to Itachi. Though over the days, an idea popped into his head. An idea that might not be as pleasant as the other ones. This idea being that, well, Naruto was left on purpose. Naruto hadn't eaten anything in the past 5 days, and now he's becoming sick. He hasn't drank anything either. His body is simply not used to this kind of condition. He's always either had free minerals and resources for his body to work in his test tube, well, not test tube, but his fluid tank that he lived on and lived in for quite a few years when he was young, or he just got normal food. But now, he didn't even know how to get food. Itachi or Orochimaru always gave him food, so how is he gonna get any? He did know how to hunt, but not how to prepare food exactly. He could set up a fire, but he doesn't know when the food is ready to eat. What if it's dangerous to eat? What animals can you eat? So many issues, so many problems, and no one, nothing to fix them. Until a girl came to Naruto. Naruto had been alone for the past days, and now a girl suddenly wandered in his alleyway. The alleyway where he slept, stared at the wall, and stared at the sky, and thought many, many, many things for hours on end, as all he did was think, sleep, and think some more. He didn't even have the energy to go around the village, and even if he wanted to, what was the point? There was no fun in it, and really, there was no reason to. And now this girl was checking up on him. She asked, "Are you alright? You seem kinda pale." And it's true. Naruto hasn't drank or eaten in many days now. Well, almost a week. But considering the condition he is in, that is quite a few days. And he indeed became pale and sick, and even started hallucinating. At some times, he wasn't even fully conscious anymore. He just couldn't. His body was nowhere near trained to do this, and the first time depriving himself of resources like food and water, and this happens. Also, he's completely frozen. He feels cold all the time as he has nowhere to sleep, except on a street, being warmed by only the two houses that are beside him, but sealed off with a concrete wall. Huh? I'm asking if you're pale, dummy. I guess so. Are you okay? Do you need help? You seem alone. I've seen the past few days. Do you have nowhere to sleep? As Naruto looked down at the floor and nodded. I guess so. As the girl sat down next to Naruto, also now staring at the same wall that Naruto had been staring at for many, many hours on end. So, do you like being here? No, of course not. But where should I go? Naruto barely even had the energy to speak, much less think about what he's actually talking about. Well, I guess you could have come to my place first. You should probably eat something. I haven't seen you eat at all. Have you ever eaten before? Yeah, of course I've eaten before. Just not lately. Alright then, come with me. As the girl conveniently grabbed Naruto's hand and dragged him across the street, with people staring at them whilst they were flying by, as the girl was running pretty fast. And they stopped at a shop. It was a small shop, though the atmosphere around it seemed to be happy. Happier than anything Naruto's ever seen before. It was incredible even. So the girl took Naruto to sit down in the shop, as it was actually a stand where you could buy food. And it was a food that Naruto has never seen before. They called this food ramen, and the place was apparently called Ichiraku's Ramen Place. And the first thing that Naruto did after taking a bite of that ramen was start to cry. The ramen was delicious. It was so great. The greatest thing that Naruto has ever been allowed to taste in his life. It changed his entire worldview. This ramen, or whatever it's called, is something godly. The ramen is of a different universe. And all that made in such a small stand, with no one here to eat it. That's weird. It's so good. As Naruto continued to eat it, and think out loud, as the girl chuckled and started eating her ramen as well. And Ichiraku appreciating every comment that Naruto accidentally said. After they're finally done eating, the girl is kinda not sure what to do, as she has no money to pay. And money is a completely foreign concept to Naruto, as it was never important to his training from Orochimaru, and, well, never really important for Itachi either, since Naruto never did shopping alone, so never something that Naruto even knew existed. Well, he kinda knew it existed, but he didn't really understand it at all. Doesn't make sense. Why would you use silver and some part of a tree for goods? That doesn't make sense. But Ichiraku, being the absolute legend he is, he let it go and let them eat without having to pay, as he saw that there was actually something wrong with Naruto, so he let it go and hoped for the best, wishing them good luck on whatever adventure they were on. The girl then again, taking Naruto's hand, led him a little bit slower this time to a house. This was a pretty big house, but it was actually not just a house. It was a house, but inside a whole compound. This had a sign at the entrance. It said Yamanaka on it. Naruto had heard that name before. Right! The clan that can control people's minds and transfer information. That's incredible. Naruto jumped up, as he's now a little bit more healthy. The ramen had given him calories as well as water for his body to recover, and the heat had warmed him up from the inside. All in all, he was feeling much better, even though he was still not feeling great. But compared to yesterday and the beginning of today, he was feeling impeccable. The girl being kind of surprised that Naruto knows the clan, as it's not very much talked about, except for experienced shinobi who know it, of course, for their special abilities. The girl continues to walk and then stops at a big house and knocks on it. Opening the door is a tall man with blonde hair, who's glad to see the girl, probably his daughter. But then when looking over to Naruto, he asks who that friend of hers is. A friend? That's interesting. Perhaps Naruto is a friend now. After now entering the Namikaze house, Naruto seemed to be welcomed by both the girl's mother and father, as well as another child, seeming to be the younger sister of the girl that Naruto met, which he actually found out the one that saved him from the street was Ino Yamanaka, a girl pretty much exactly his age. She was very, very kind, and in Naruto's eyes, the most beautiful girl that he'd ever seen. The whole family seemed to have an extremely kind nature, and actually went as far as took Naruto in completely, since they were the head family of the Yamanaka clan, a clan that over the past few years had actually grown quite a bit in the Leaf Village, grown not just in numbers but also influence. They had a pretty big house, which actually allowed them to give Naruto a whole room for himself. It was a guest room, so it wasn't huge, but it was extremely kind. Naruto couldn't even have imagined the hustle to give a random kid that they just met that day, to give him his own room. Yet, they did. They gave him breakfast, they gave him food, and they always had a smile. Naruto felt like in heaven, and over the next 2 days, he almost forgot the whole Itachi journey, and even kind of forgot that Itachi left him there, alone. His last 3 days of misery had completely vanished in Naruto's mind, and all he could focus on was the present, was the beauty of Konoha. He went on walks throughout the village and met many, many new people, not just of the Yamanaka clan, which all seemed to like him and were all very kind, but everyone in the village seemed to be so nice to Naruto, and so he picked that up, and Naruto became a very kind person as well. Naruto became very, very good friends with Ino. By the way, not in a weird way. They were way too young. Please don't do that. Then, on the 3rd day that Naruto was there, right after lunch, Ino asked if she can borrow some shuriken from her father and throw them at a tree. She wanted to show Naruto a cool skill that she had. She'd practiced before a little because she wanted to have a head start in the academy, as she knew that it was going to be an important part in her life, and she'd always wanted to be a shinobi. So, she wanted to practice and get ahead of everyone else. And now she wanted to flex on Naruto, show him her skill. And even though it took 3 attempts to actually stick a shuriken in the tree, she did it, and Naruto was pretty impressed. He asked if he could try one, as Ino had 5 in her hand, so 2 left now after throwing 3 of them. Naruto aligned it perfectly, had it in his right hand, and swung his entire arm, not just with a flick of his wrist, like he should have. But somehow, it was stuck in the tree. It didn't just stick in the tree, it kind of obliterated the tree. It went in about halfway through. Well, a little more than that, which is actually the leading cause for the tree to fall over. It was not a huge tree, but it was a pretty thick one. So Naruto basically cutting down the tree with a single throw of a shuriken that he's never had in his hands before. That was very impressive. Ino was shocked. She was extremely impressed. Now this all happened in, you could say, the Yamanaka Park. It was not huge, but it was like a garden, but rather big. It was basically an orchard, but with a lot of free space. It wasn't really for farming, but it was a beautiful area. Green grass, beautiful trees, and many animals, especially birds, were there and sung songs together. It was the true beauty of nature, and Naruto got to witness it firsthand. However, now back in the moment, neither Ino nor Naruto knew what to say. Naruto had put in a little too much force in it, and Ino did not know how to react. Should she be scared? Surprised? Happy? I mean, it was just weird. Naruto had never even told her about the training that he did, or about anything about Orochimaru or Itachi. Really, all he told the Yamanakas was that he had been traveling with a friend, but then they seemed to get separated. Now, over the next few weeks and months, he would open up more and more. Of course, not telling the whole story, but he would tell bit by bit more and more. But more to that later. Ino isn't sure what to say, so she runs inside the house. It's not a long walk. It's only about 100 meters. 330. Which she runs pretty fast. In the living room, she sees her sister and her two parents cleaning the dishes, with her sister playing on the floor with a miniature Hashirama doll. Well, she is gonna grow up to be a shinobi after all, so you gotta start 'em young. They all look surprised when Ino shouts, Naruto's incredible! We know he's a special boy, her mother says. No, but when he threw a shuriken, the tree was cut in half. It fell over, Ino yelled. It what? Her father was intrigued. I mean, cutting down a tree like that is not an easy task. But for an untrained shinobi, that's not possible. I have to see this for myself. I'm coming too, Ino's sister yelled, as she stood up with her Hashirama figure in her hand and ran across the room, jolting out the door before even Ino's father and Ino herself could. They walked pretty fast. Didn't run, but fast walking, over where Naruto was still near the now cut down tree, inspecting it, looking if perhaps it was an old tree, perhaps it was already broken, it perhaps already had cuts. But no, it was a good tree, a healthy tree. A young, not too young, but not too old, a prime tree. And Naruto cut it down. Did you do this, Naruto? Naruto was a little shook. Not only was he shook from what he just did, but it was the first time that Ino's father and Ino herself didn't have such a smile on their face. They were surprised for the first time. They didn't know what to say for the first time. And that scared Naruto. Naruto once again felt the old anxiety that he had. He suddenly missed a family once more, missed Itachi, missed the life that he had, missed his journey. Everything came back rushing to him. So much so that he fainted. It was just too much to handle at once, as Ino's father immediately ran over, and then, without inspecting the tree further or asking any questions, he picked up Naruto and brought him to the house to lay on the couch for now. They cared for him, as Naruto didn't wake up for 2.5 days. As the family was eating dinner, Naruto woke up, feeling different. He didn't feel sad, he didn't feel happy. He was just there. As he saw the happy family eating dinner, but then all of them stopped. There was silence, as Naruto stared at the family, and the family stared at Naruto. And then Ino ran over and hugged Naruto. Breaking the silence, she said, "I'm so glad you're here." I thought you were hurt. I'm sorry, Naruto said lightly. Come on, dear, you can't scare us like that. Well, do you want to eat anything? Ino's mother said lightly, matching Naruto's tone. As then Naruto broke into tears once more. He wasn't sad. He was happy. He had truly found a family. He was so glad. As he ate dinner and lived with the Yamanakas for the following 2 weeks, they talked about the incident and Naruto cleared things up. He had actually had a little bit of training before. A little bit being over a year. He didn't mention anything about the genetics or kekkei genkai he had, but he said that his former mentor, which is the one that raised him as well, did train him. And then he went on a journey with his friend, and then he arrived in the Leaf Village. That's basically it. However, today was a big day. Naruto would go to the academy, as of course Ino would. It's what she had been practicing her shuriken for all this time. It was the start of her journey as a shinobi. But Ino's parents had a great idea, especially her father, who said, well, I mean, he already has some practice, so why don't you go to the academy? You're the right age. You're basically exactly Ino's age. So you two can go together. Wouldn't that be great? As Ino's mother nodded, agreeing, and Ino was incredibly happy to hear this. She wouldn't have to, well, be at the academy alone for the next 4 years. She would already have a friend like Naruto. Of course, she knew other people and had other friends too, but having Naruto there would make her very happy. He was a really good friend. Also very kind like the Yamanakas. He was like a brother. Like a twin, basically. They had similar thinking, they liked similar things, and they were just happy around each other. So, together, they now went to the academy after having eaten breakfast. They were one of the earliest in the academy building, as when he arrived, Naruto's memories came back to him a little bit. Of course, he hadn't forgotten them, but his memories about going into the academy and seeing all these ways, trapdoors, it all came back, rushing into his head. But Naruto wasn't sad. He was just excited to see what would await him the next 4 years in the academy. Many new students and new faces came into the room. Naruto was excited to become friends with each and every one of them, and would be very happy to hear their story, meet them, talk to them. He loved people. After seeing the Yamanakas, he was excited to talk to anyone he saw on the street. He loved social interaction. It was what he lived for. Then the teacher came in, and silence struck the room. Everyone had been talking, and everyone was smiling, laughing. It was a great mood, and then the teacher was happy as well. It was Iruka, a Chunin. Naruto never met him, though he seemed very nice as well. Now, of course, they weren't expected to be able to do anything, but just for fun, and kind of as a meeting exercise, to get to know each other a little bit better, Iruka decided, instead of doing the traditional name games and stuff like that, or 2 truths and a lie, why don't they do sparring matches? Well, they won't do them in the following years anyways, so why don't they do some now to prepare? They will be shinobi after all, so they can start now. It's the same as starting in 30 months. The entire class, along with, of course, their teacher Iruka, went out to the training field. It wasn't huge, not as large as the Yamanaka compound, but it was still pretty good. It was an open space with green grass, 2 nice-looking trees, and just a nice atmosphere. The sun shining brightly, and everyone was happy. It was a very pretty scenery, and people were definitely enjoying themselves. So, how this is going to work is I'm going to pair everyone up in a 2-people team, and then you shall fight against each other. You should be allowed to choose your own teams. So, if you have someone in mind, just ask them, and if you both agree, you can tell me, and I'll write you down for a fighting match. Of course, it is only sparring, so don't hurt each other too much, yeah? Iruka laughed it off, and everyone scattered to find a partner to fight. All the boys immediately wanted to choose someone strong, as they actually thought that they wanted to fight, like, as a battle. Now, this wasn't all the boys. Shikamaru Naro, of course, was lazy as ever, but shouldn't be underestimated, is what Naruto thought. Naruto didn't scatter for a partner either, and Choji kept eating his chips, which he had 3 bags of. And then there was a black-haired boy. He wasn't lazy. He didn't look like anything. But all the girls immediately went up to ask him to be his partner. Naruto wondered why. He didn't know, but he made a mental note to find out. It could be very important. And he wanted to know everybody in his class further anyways, so starting with that boy would be good either way. Ino is the only girl that didn't immediately jump to Sasuke. Of course, she went to Naruto. And, of course, he accepted. And so, both of them happily walked to Iruka, each one with a smile bigger than the last, and he wrote their names down as the first match. He'd never seen this boy before, but perhaps they were already friends, so who knows? Perhaps they should sit together in class. We'll see. Then, one by one, more and more partners went up to Iruka, but then there was a dilemma that Iruka hadn't thought of. It was an uneven amount of people. There were 3 people left: Choji, Shikamaru, and Sasuke. Iruka asked which of them would become a partner to who, and of course Choji said out loud that he would be Shikamaru's partner. And Shikamaru didn't really care, so he agreed. But there was still the problem of Sasuke being alone. And of course, the dummy that he is, Naruto said out loud, "I'll fight twice. I am the first fight after all, so I can recharge my strength and fight him next. As the last match though, yeah? Works for me." As without even asking Sasuke how he felt about it, Iruka wrote down the match as the last one, Naruto versus Sasuke. But for now, the interesting part was Naruto versus Ino. The first match for this year's Academy class. Everyone was excited to see what this boy that they've never seen before could do against the heirs to the Yamanaka clan. And really, what Ino could do. Ino had been preparing, after all, and some people knew that. But Ino was still scared. She'd seen what Naruto did only a few weeks ago. So, did she really have a chance against that kind of brute force? Well, we'll see. Ino got ready and immediately took out a kunai from her pouch. So if Naruto got close, she would throw it without hesitation. She was a shinobi after all, and she had a fierce look on her eyes. Naruto knew that she was not messing around. This was a fight after all. Alright then. Let's do this! Naruto yelled and ran at Ino, though in a zigzag so that he couldn't be hit by any shuriken or kunai. He was so fast he did a full 360 around Ino, her head not even being able to follow him, and then kicked her from the side, which did make her fall to the ground. Naruto didn't put all of his force into it, but Ino did feel it. A lot. But she wasn't done. She was a warrior after all, so she stood up to fight once more. The battle was not over. She stood her ground as Naruto was very impressed. And then, to everyone's surprise, she started running across the battlefield as well. Also in a zigzag, just like Naruto did. Of course, a little slower, but still. She wasn't easy to hit now, just like Naruto wasn't. And then Naruto copied her. Well, she copied him. So really, who's the copier? Well, whatever. He did the zigzag run too. And so, it wasn't even a real battle. They were running, but they were fast. And it looked like they were both speeding up more and more. The teacher was very interested. Iruka had never seen this kind of fighting, if you could even call it that. But nonetheless, it was very impressive. They were both really, really fast for their age. Especially Naruto, who seemed to be outrunning Ino by about 10%. But still, they were both very, very fast. and then they ran towards each other in a straight line, and then kicked each other. Their legs crossed midair, but Naruto won. Ino was strong, yes, especially for her age, but against Naruto and his cruel training, she had no chance. However, Naruto bowed at the end of the fight. Ino had definitely earned his respect, and then he offered her his hand to get up as she had been pushed down by the force of Naruto's kick, and then they both went to the side where the teacher was, with both Ino and Naruto smiling, and then the following fights continued. No one could top that fight. It was impressive beyond belief, and no matter what anyone tried, that wasn't to be topped on that day. But Naruto would still have one more fight in front of him. This was against the prodigy, Sasuke. And when he asked who Sasuke is, Iruka says that he is the last remaining Uchiha. Uchiha? Wait a minute. Wasn't that... Oh, I see. Naruto remembered that the Uchiha was Itachi's clan, and he slayed all of them, except for his brother. And since this one is the last known Uchiha, putting two and two together, this has to be Itachi's brother. Naruto was gonna give him a fair fight, as he saw Sasuke already as his own brother as well. He saw Itachi as his brother, so logically, Itachi's brother was his brother. And he was gonna make this fight, even if it was a spar, count. They both went to the battlefield, Naruto leaving the side of Ino and Iruka, and Sasuke leaving his lonely place where he had waited for this fight to now enter the battlefield. They both bowed, did the sign of the shinobi for a fight to begin, and so it began. With Iruka, the proctor's gesture, they both rushed at each other, Sasuke with the kunai in his hands, Naruto bare-armed. He didn't have any kunai at disposal right now, but he thought that he wouldn't need them. Ino was scared that Naruto might get hurt, as he doesn't have anything to defend with against the kunai. But then again, with his speed, Naruto should be fine. But Iruka could not even blink. This fight would be very, very interesting. And it was. Just as Ino predicted, Naruto used his speed to completely outspeed Sasuke, and he dodged every single attack that Sasuke threw at him. And throw he did. He threw many kunai and shuriken, which he was even able to curve midair, as that's one of the skills that Itachi was taught by Shisui, and then later taught Sasuke. Sasuke was truly unbeatable in kunai throwing, especially shuriken, but Naruto was far higher in skill in his taijutsu, so he used that as his advantage. Every time Naruto tried to punch or kick, Sasuke jumped back. The fight wasn't moving along at all. Neither one was hitting the other, and both still had a lot more energy and perseverance for this fight to go on for hours on end, until both of them decided this needs to go better, bigger, and higher. Sasuke, when he finally had some distance between them, started his fire style, Fireball Jutsu. But Naruto stood still right before, as he clenched his fists, and then let go, sighed, and then he seemed to disappear, now standing behind Sasuke. So it's come to this, has it? Naruto released his seals, and these weren't necessarily seals put on by Orochimaru. They were seals that Itachi recommended, did put on him by force of course. He recommended them as it could be good training for Naruto to use his suppressed power, but also, in case anything happened, Naruto never wanted to hurt anyone, and Itachi, knowing this, offered up help. So, they put up seals, not on Naruto's chakra necessarily, which they also did, but a lot on his physical abilities, which were very, very strong. Sasuke fell on the ground, and similar to Ino, he stood up once more. But he was bruised. His back hurt like crazy, and his face felt deformed as the force of an entire body falling on your face was felt. Sasuke was angry, as now he tried to desperately fight with kunai, and once again tried to use his fireball jutsu, though this one he wasn't even able to finish before Naruto caught up with his immense speed, which had increased by 2 times since his fight with Ino now, and so Sasuke simply had no chance. And with one more kick to the side, Sasuke fell to the ground similar to Ino did, and then he lost. Naruto won the fight. Silence. No one knew what to say, not even the teacher. It took 10 seconds for Iruka to yell out, "Naruto wins the match!" But even then, no one said anything, till Naruto walked up to Ino, and they high-fived. "Good job, Naruto. I always knew you could do it." From that day on, Naruto was celebrated as a hero, as the strongest in the academy, and he would later prove that over and over and over again. He proved it in every practical exam, where he was always able to complete the task easily. If it was doing a transformation jutsu or a regular clone jutsu, he did it with ease. He also almost got 100% on every test that he took. Theoretical tests, this is. And even though he didn't always get full marks, he was usually the highest in the entire class. Unless Shikamaru got in trouble and he had to actually try. Which, well, if he even studied for half an hour, he would get 100% with ease. And it's not even close. But whenever Shikamaru didn't even try, well, Naruto was on top. Naruto made many friends, including Shikamaru and Choji, as because they were so relaxed and laid back, they didn't really care about Naruto being so strong and being respected by everyone. They were just friends. Kind of similarly, Naruto tried to become friends with Sasuke, though at first it was difficult. Sasuke wasn't very open to any kind of relationship, if friends, best friends, or family, or anything. He was depressed, is what Naruto thought. But little by little, Naruto got through to him. They started sitting together, even though they didn't talk much, it was still something. Then they started exchanging test scores, as Sasuke started to want to be better than Naruto. Their rivalry started quite a long time ago, when they had their battle at the first day of the academy, and now over the months and years, that grew larger and larger, and it became the main conflict in the class. A rivalry between Naruto, a random kid that came out of nowhere, and Sasuke, the last remaining Uchiha, a prodigy. However, somehow this random kid kept one-upping the last Uchiha. However, still, both of them grow very quickly, and would likely become shinobis that the world had never seen before. Naruto wasn't sure exactly when it happened, but one day, Sasuke put up a smile. And then the next day, a little more. And then the next, and the next, and the next. And Sasuke seemed to be happy for once. It was completely different than what Naruto was used to, and really anyone. But the look was fitting for Sasuke. Yeah, they'd only seen him as a depressed kid, sad, all the time, not wanting any social interaction. But this, it suited him really well, and everyone loved it. And with Sasuke recovering from his family trauma, Naruto became his new brother. And whilst of course they still had the rivalry, it wasn't something bad. They just wanted to, be better than each other. But not in a hurtful manner. It was a brotherly, a friendly rivalry. And Sasuke started to open up to the rest of the class as well. Of course, Naruto's best friend also became one of Sasuke's good friends, Ino. And so that became the trio of danger. 2 brotherly shinobi and 1 kunoichi from the Yamanaka clan. One time Iruka took on teams of 5 of students, just to see how far they are. This was 2 years into the academy, by the way. So pretty much half of their time. Now, of course the students weren't expected to win, And of course, Iruka wouldn't go full force. It wasn't a fight to the death, or really a fight graded on anything. It was just kind of a fun exercise that Iruka wanted to do to try to power out some of the students that were still hyperactive after a long day. But the results were something that no one expected. Out of the group of 5, which consisted of Shikamaru, Choji, Ino, Sasuke, and Naruto, of course the trio Sasuke, Naruto, and Ino stood out, and they were able to work together diligently to actually beat Iruka. They attacked from all sides, and with their speed, Iruka had to use more and more of his own power. And now they were even fighting on a Genin level, and that turned into a high Genin level, and then what some would even consider a low Chunin level. And then Iruka forfeited the match. He said that he'd lost, as all 3 of the students stopped in their tracks, who were all at the same time about to attack Iruka from each side. It was really impressive, and even Shikamaru, who never really cared that much for anything in the class, was very impressed, and even he was interested in how the 3 did that. He knew they were pretty amazing, but beating a Chunin at the age of 10? That's really impressive. Rumors spread throughout the village, and the team got even more recognition than they already had. Of course, they were all heirs to a clan. Well, except for Naruto. But the rest was already highly valued. I mean, the entire clan was basically heirs to their respective clans. You had the Inuzuka, Yamanaka, Sasuke with the, well, last Uchiha, and so on and so forth. But these 3 now were just even better, already being on at least a Genin level at the age of 10. Anyways, the next 2 years seemed to pass by pretty quickly. Of course, quite a few things happened, not just with the Genin, but the entire village. But time seemed to fly by, and then there was only 1 week left until the Genin exams. And Naruto wanted to go on an adventure. And well, an adventure he would get. He told Ino and Sasuke about something that he overheard in the Hokage's office. It was to Chunin talking to the Hokage. Naruto always had a pretty close relationship to the 3rd, but never saw him as really that close. He was a leader. But now, Naruto could prove his worth, not just to the village leaders, but to the civilians, and also to himself and his friends. Naruto was going to do the mission faster than the Chunin could. He overheard that the Chunin would only arrive next day at morning. So, Naruto would have about 12 hours to complete this mission before the Chunin arrive and take his thunder. Steal his thunder, rather. Naruto, we can't let you do this. I hate to agree, but Ino is right, Sasuke said. No, guys, you don't understand. This is how I'm gonna become famous. Naruto was of course joking. He never really had that much of a desire to become famous or anything like that. He just wanted, a little bit of recognition, as we all do. Well, if you're determined to do this, then I'm gonna go with you, Ino said, with a serious look on her face. Once again, hate to agree, but I'm in too, Sasuke responded to their not even asked question. Really, guys? See, you're coming along then. I mean, I'm not hearing any no's, so... We're going? Yes, Naruto, we're going. Alright, everybody, you have 20 minutes to pack your things. Let's do this, Naruto yelled, and then ran off to his home. And his home was still the Yamanaka compound. He had offered many times to get his own apartment or something like that, but the Yamanakas refused. They had come to see Naruto as one of their own. Not just his own close family, of course Ino's family, but all of the Yamanakas. They loved Naruto. Naruto was truly one of them. No one knew of his clan or heritage or anything. He was one of them, truly. So yeah, Naruto and Ino still lived together. So they both quickly ran to their rooms, and so did Sasuke, grabbed all their stuff, including kunai, some bandages, enough water, and a little bit of food, as they would probably be out for a few hours. And all of them, very nervous, went out of the leaf. They told the village guards that they would just look at some plants and herbs outside the forest. Well, rather, outside the village gates in the forest. They were suspicious, but then let it go. They knew of these three Genin, well, soon to be Genin, as really strong. So they knew what they were doing, hopefully. And so this team was let go, was let on the loose. The team of Ino, Naruto, and Sasuke. Naruto had pretty good directions on where to go, though only the walking bit would alone take an hour. It was pretty far away. Well, not necessarily far, but the way to get there was a little bit difficult. There was mountains, rivers, lakes, and animals in the way. A lot of brown bears. But when they finally arrived, they saw a village that seemed to have been ransacked. How could this happen to anyone? Ina asked. I don't know, but we gotta fix it. And fast, Naruto responded. I don't think we have to look far, Sasuke says. What do you mean by that? We don't know exactly where our enemies are gonna be, do we? Sasuke sighed. Just turn around, Naruto. As there were 15 thugs standing right behind Naruto. Sasuke wasn't too scared, as they were lucky that it wasn't any shinobi. But Naruto was just excited to fight. Ino was the most cautious out of the three, and was ready to attack, but also ready to, well, help anyone if they needed a bandage or anything. Of course she was still gonna fight though. She's not just a medic. Though, she always had dreams of training under Tsunade, one of the most known and respected kunoichi ever. And perhaps one day, she would find Tsunade and bring her back to the Leaf Village. That was her dream. But for now, they'd have to fight some thugs. Naruto and Sasuke rushed in as fast as they always did, without any kind of plan. Ino stayed back a little bit. Of course, she could try to use her Yamanaka techniques, which allowed her to switch the bodies of others, or rather control the bodies of others for a short time, but she kind of needed defense, as she was completely vulnerable when she did that. However, luckily, Naruto put up some clones of his before rushing into battle. And now, Naruto and Sasuke were fighting about 13 of the thugs, all on their own. But two of them, well, those two were gonna go for Ino. By the way, if you're wondering why these thugs are even attacking little children, well, they saw the Konoha sign on their backs. Each one of the three kids had some form of a sign that they were from Konoha. Of course, Sasuke had the Uchiha logo, Naruto, the Uzumaki/Whirlpool sign on his sweater, and then Ino kind of had a mix of the Whirlpool sign that was traditional to be worn in the Leaf Village, but also kind of her Yamanaka style clothing. It was, as said, a mix. And so the thugs thought that perhaps there was going to be, well, Konoha ninjas sent out to eliminate them. Which they were not wrong. Just, it wasn't these children. Naruto, now seeing that Ino was being threatened, immediately went back from offense and tried to defend Ino. Though, once he arrived, he saw that Ino didn't need any help. She had already taken out both of the thugs. And so now she saw that she didn't need to play defensively and use her combination techniques. She could just fight offensively, just like Naruto and Sasuke were. These thugs really weren't that strong, which was weird. And so, finally, after another 5 minutes, Ino, Naruto, and Sasuke took out 15 thugs, all on their own. And whilst they were fighting, all of the villagers inside this small settlement had come out to look, and they saw little children beating up people who had oppressed the entire village for quite a little bit. Someone who seemed to be much older than all the others, likely the village elder, came up to talk to the three, along with one middle-aged man and one middle-aged woman. Perhaps his guards or something like that. "We thank you, children, from the bottom of our hearts. We cannot give you any compensation, sadly, but we still appreciate you a lot, and you may stay in our village for as long as you may, as long as you want, and as long as you can." That last bit sounded intimidating to Ino, but she shook it off, and with a little feast that the three children were spoiled with, they then left once more to Konoha. The whole trip only took, well, about 2.5 hours. And so the story of gathering herbs was actually kind of believable, as when they came back, the three children said exactly the same thing. They were just gathering herbs. And so nothing was suspected, and now they were all ready to head to the Genin exams with already much more experience than the entire class combined. The tests were really easy. Of course, the written part, the theoretical part, and then shuriken stuff. It was all aced by all three of the now Genin. And so, they all got their headbands. Naruto and Sasuke, of course, both put it on their head. Well, on their forehead. But Ino decided to switch it up and put it on her thigh. On her left thigh, to be exact. So now they were all decked out to become official Genin, actual shinobi, and they were ready to meet their Jonin senseis. Now that Naruto, Ino, and Sasuke, all three were Genin, now they could start on their journey. They came in the classroom the next day and met up with their Jonin sensei. Well, that was the plan anyways. It took a long time till the Jonin sensei arrived. That was Jonin Kakashi Hatake, the last remaining one of his clan, but still an incredibly strong shinobi, famous around the world. Of course, they had their introductions and then were called to the roof. Just that, well, it was 3 hours after everybody else was gone, so Naruto and Sasuke were already asleep, the only one being awake. So she woke both of the boys up, and then they all went to the roof. Kakashi had each one introduce themselves, and then explain what they would do over the next few days. Well, most importantly, what they would do tomorrow. Tomorrow morning would start their, last exam, you could say. It was an exam to see if they were truly prepared to be Genin, named the Bell Test, and they weren't supposed to eat the day before. Not much was said about it, but Kakashi said he would explain the next day. So without eating, Naruto and Ino went pretty early to the training ground, and met up with Sasuke on the way. But, no surprise, their Jonin sensei was nowhere to be found. And so, they sat there, and waited, and waited, and waited, until 1 hour passed, 2 hours passed, and finally, after 2.5 hours of waiting, Kakashi Hatake arrived. He kind of did the opposite of what he said he would do. He didn't come on time. He didn't explain what they would do either. He just said, "Let's start. You have to grab this bell. There's only 2 for 3 people, so one will have to go back to the academy, and that's basically it." And then they started the challenge. Now, as much as they wanted to win this challenge, neither Sasuke nor Naruto or Ino wanted another to fail. None of them wanted the other to go back to the academy. All of them wanted to go together to become Genin, and they wanted to stick together no matter what happens. So they thought of a loophole. Kakashi said that all of them need to be holding a bell. So if they all keep the bells inside one person's hand but all hold them, then that would count, right? First they had to get them though, else it was just wishful thinking. So they fought. They worked in a team, of course. They were legends. They were insane at fighting in a team. Both Ino, Naruto, and Sasuke all fought at the same time. None of them not doing something at any given time. Each one doing ninjutsu, taijutsu, or anything. They were fighting as if they'd been fighting in a war for 20 years all together as a specially trained squad of soldiers. It was insane. Kakashi was completely taken back at this. How? How could these little children, these runts, even do anything to a Jonin? Yet, with more and more time, Kakashi had to take this fight more and more seriously. Of course, he knew that he had to take the Uchiha boys somewhat seriously, but then these other two, they're not weak. If anything, they're on the same level, if not even stronger. And the yellow-haired boy, he's a mystery. But then something completely unexpected happened. Whilst they were both fighting close distance, maximum maybe mid-distance, Sasuke and Naruto were now completely backing off, jumping back with Ino taking the advance. But instead of using any ninjutsu or anything like that, Sasuke and Naruto focused their energy, focused their chakra into their head, specifically their eyes. And then Sasuke, with his Uchiha genes, turned on the Sharingan. And Naruto, well, he turned a Sharingan as well as a Byakugan. A deadly combo that shouldn't even be possible by the laws of nature. The Naruto was a beast that completely transcended nature itself. Now they were all three of them, pushing Kakashi back, well, theoretically back, but pushing Kakashi into each other. He was completely surrounded, and he couldn't do anything to escape. And even when he tried to jump up and get high ground in the air, Naruto was simply too fast, and the other two followed him as well. Kakashi could not get a moment of break, and then he did it himself. He took off the patch on his left eye, and the Sharingan of Kakashi Hatake saw the daylight, and saw the three genin in front of him. Now, it was three Genkai users, specifically three Sharingan users, all fighting each other. Well, not each other. Two of them allied against the other one. And this did help Kakashi, but it wasn't enough. He was still pushed back, as Naruto seemed to get stronger and stronger by the second at this point. And as strong as he was, he couldn't use all of his power. And so, swallowing his pride, he let himself be captured and his belts be taken by the three genin. And, well, it's kind of a given, but they did pass the test. Of course, they did all three hold the two belts, but that wasn't even the true purpose of the test, Kakashi explained. It was just to see if they could do teamwork, which, well, they did a little bit too good, if that's even a thing. Then they started their first missions. Of course, the D-rank missions, but they were insanely boring, and all three of the genin decided to complain to the Hokage himself. And so, of course, he was already planning to, but then he gave them a harder mission. This one being a C-rank mission to escort Tazuna, the bridge builder. So Tazuna came out from the room next door and met all three, well, 4 shinobi, 3 genin. Tazuna didn't bother to make any comments about the genin. Whilst they did kinda look funny at first, they all had serious expressions on their face, and seemed to be ready for battle. And then, looking up at their sensei, Tazuna knew not to mess with them. They weren't just kids, they were shinobi. So, they started their mission pretty fast, and Yeah, Kakashi wasn't late to the appointment. They all met at the gates and then left, using a diamond position where Naruto was at the front, Sasuke to the left, Ino to the right, and Jonin Kakashi at the back, with Tazuna being in the middle, being protected from all sides. On the way, they saw a puddle, which turned out to be a genjutsu of two demon brothers, two Chunin who were sent to kill Tazuna. But Naruto and Sasuke, each one getting one of the brothers, they both handcuffed them. Well, that was the plan after all. But Naruto seemed to go further. In the end, he ended up killing one of the brothers. Over his journey with Itachi, many people had tried to take Itachi's bounty. There were actual shinobi who tried to capture Itachi for his crimes. Others who simply tried to rob Itachi as if he was a normal person. And with that, Naruto saw bloodshed and murder and killing. Not all was done by Itachi, but a fair amount. He tried to use his genjutsu as much as possible, but some people, they refused. They refused to take no for an answer, and they had to fight till their death. And at some point, Naruto started helping Itachi as well. Therefore, Naruto became a murderer, and he lived with that sin until now. However, his nature could not be stopped and could not be changed. Therefore, he continued to now kill. It wasn't even on purpose. It was an instinct of Naruto's. And now, staring at his corpse in front of him, many memories came back of Itachi's smile. After Sasuke and Ino pulled him out of his misery, Naruto went on with the mission. Kakashi tried to get some answers from the left demon brother, but he seemed to be in a state of shock and could not give any straight answers, which is why they left him there. But Kakashi sent a dog back to Konoha for them to, grab this rogue shinobi and put him in jail, or interrogate him, or whatever, really. It was up to the elders to know what to do with outlaws. But so Team 7 continued to do their mission. And then, of course, Kakashi became curious and suspicious of Tazuna's promise. He said it was a C-rank mission, but just from these Chunin level threats, it was clearly B-ranked, at least. And they hadn't even really started the mission. This was just on their journey to get to Tazuna's village. Tazuna admitted this problem, that he didn't have enough money, and that his village didn't have enough money to send him and have enough to pay for a mission like that. But with a vote amongst the Genin, Kakashi found out that each one of them was ready to fight, even in a harder mission. And so Tazuna was overcome with joy, and they continued the mission nonetheless. Just before they get to Tazuna's house, they find a shinobi of a whole different kind of caliber. This was Zabuza Hoshigaki. He was a Jonin from the Hidden Mist, and challenged Team 7 to hand over Tazuna, else it would be bloody. But, of course, Team 7 wasn't willing to comply, so a fight broke out between Kakashi and Zabuza, though Naruto and Sasuke both joined in, and Ino protected Tazuna. Quickly, Zabuza noticed that he was completely outmatched. He would be kind of able to beat Kakashi, even if it was pretty close, but no way he could beat Zabuza. So basically, his equivalent, which you kind of would be able to beat, plus these two Genin, who seem to be completely out of any league of any other Genin. They would at least be Chunin. One of them, the yellow-haired one, perhaps even stronger than a regular Chunin. They were not normal Genin. And so, Haku, one hidden in the trees, threw many Sanron needles at Zabuza, which stopped her heartbeat, breathing, and really any mortal life signs. However, Naruto had seen this before, he had seen many medicinal tricks from Kabuto and would not buy this, as he clearly saw that Zabuza was not truly dead. So when Haku came over to collect Zabuza's body, Naruto attacked him with a kunai. And since Zabuza was completely out of combat shape, well, Haku was off to fend for himself. He tries to use his ice mirror technique, though Sasuke quickly pushed out any chance of that happening by kicking Haku right across the cheek. Well, his face. So now both Haku and Zabuza were on the ground and they had no chance. Kakashi summoned all sorts of dogs, each one to help escort Zabuza and Haku back to the Leaf Village, as Kakashi made sure that both of them would stay unconscious long enough for the puppies and dogs to get to Konoha and bring these two fugitives, well, outlaws, to justice. And then they continued their mission. Kakashi was now completely impressed with both Sasuke, Naruto, and even Ino. All of them made a strategy very quick, were all incredibly strong, and helped Kakashi. But Naruto even more. He noticed that Zabuza was not dead, and attacked Haku just as fast. It was incredible. Even some Jonin would have had trouble dealing with that. But now they continued their mission. And so, after a few days of rest, they guided the bridge builder to the actual bridge for him to build it. Naruto helped out building. He was really, really fast and had mastered a completely secret technique. This was the Shadow Clone, and it was taught to him by Orochimaru, who thought that he had so much power that he could learn it. And of course, Naruto also had a bunch of other clones, such as Wood Clone, but he didn't want to use them since it would be very suspicious if a random kid had Wood style, wouldn't it? He hadn't told anyone about his god-tier genetics, except for Sasuke and Ino. Well, partly. But of course now Kakashi knows that he has a Sharingan for whatever reason. They didn't really discuss why. But Kakashi's kind of interested in Naruto now, for whatever reason. Sharingan being one of them. So they completed the mission by, well, on the last day, killing anybody who arrived, as a whole bunch of people hired by Gato, the one who wanted to stop the bridge building as it hurt his business, a true mafia man, hired a bunch of assassins, rogue shinobi, criminals, and so on to take out Team 7 and Tazuna, though were all quickly defeated by Team 7, each one defeating about 10 shinobi. Well, fighters, not truly shinobi, but it felt like they were fighting true shinobi, so they made it out to be that. And Kakashi saw even more fighting power in his genin, and he saw the will to fight in their genin. And then finally, they struck down Gato, saving the land forever. They got back to the village. Konoha the village, that is. But not before finding out that this village would be named the Naruto Bridge, as he was essential in not only building it, but also helping to save Tazuna's life, now twice. Well, really 3 times if you count the Demon Brothers, though they weren't a big threat. Anyways, now their first mission has been completed. Their first hard mission, that is, as it was now named an A-rank mission with the interference of Zabuza and Haku. However, nonetheless, they completed it perfectly, which earned all of them a bonus, a little bit of extra cash. And now they found out from Kakashi that tuning exams would soon be held, and he thought that each one of them should apply and would probably have a good chance at actually becoming tuning from the kind of skill that he just saw on this mission. But that's going to be it for this part. And more interestingly, I'm going to do something that I haven't done before. With this series, I'm going to leave it open-ended. Now, of course, I didn't get through a lot of the actual series in quite a long time. That, well, I took just explaining stuff. But I'm going to leave it here for anyone who's willing to continue the series in their head, write it out, or actually make a what if on YouTube. Anyone's free to upload if you want to. I promise I won't have a problem with it. So, whatever you do, I hope you enjoyed the beginning of the series, and I hope you'll continue to make it up in your head. Thank you for watching, and I hope you liked it.